Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I'm setting up things, I'm moving things, I'm talking to you. 5 people here, good to see you. Frank, you made it. Frank Petrie, everybody. Do you know Frank? If you don't, you should. Hey, Frank, do me a favor in the chat, put where you want people to go to the stuff that you write and read and things like that. I like Frank. Frank, honestly, is largely responsible. I don't even know if Frank knows this. Frank is largely responsible for there being a Mac OS Ken. Because when I had my falling out with Scott Shepard on Inside Mac, I went to Macworld that year, 2006, and Frank asked me a question about a time that I'd gone on a laughing jag about 5 months earlier, and he wanted to know if I remembered what it was, and I did. I don't remember anymore, Frank. But the other thing that Frank did was said, "When are you going to start doing the Daily Show again?" Frank was one of, I believe, 2 people at Macworld who said, "When are you going to go back to doing that?" So if you don't like macOS Ken, it's Frank's fault. Right? We're gonna do a thing, and it's a weird time to do a thing because I don't have TV, but I have social media, I have Apple News, I know that there's stuff going on, and it's still time to do the show. If we waited until there was nothing going on, I wouldn't have done a show for the past 4 years. So I'm not making light. I know it's real and it's weird. And this is not the show for that, so we're not going to touch on it. There you go. Now I'm actually starting the live thing here in a couple of minutes. Did I say a couple of minutes? A couple of seconds. I'm going to have my, what do you call it on? Yes, 2006, Frank. Honestly. I have my glasses on a lot today because I've been hiding an iPad here so that you guys wouldn't see what I was reading. But today I wanted to go a little bit more off the cuff, so I wrote it all down. And of course, now I can't see a blessed thing that I've written. So you get bespectacled me today a lot. Here we go. Is Apple a services company? And can I please have a contact tracing app? It is Friday, the 2nd of October, 2020. And this is macOS Ken Live. Hi, everybody. Ken Ray here. Thanking you very much for joining us today. Got a show that I'm excited about. And, I've now done this for 2 weeks. And I'll be honest, I'm not always excited about the topics that I have. I don't think today's topics are fun necessarily, but I do think they're interesting. I think there's lots of stuff to dig around in. So come along, fellow Fido, and we'll root through the yard together. Second part of the show, we're going to talk about the Apple Google contact tracing API, specifically why it's taking so long for states and countries to get on board with it. We'll get to that in a bit. First, though, there is a story that I did not do yesterday. And I meant to do it, today, for macOS Ken. I meant to do it today, and then it got really late because while people on the East Coast were sleeping, night owls on the East Coast or people in other parts of the country saw that the president had tested positive for COVID-19. And that kind of messed with my head for a bit. And so I eventually did a macOS Ken. It was later than it should have been, and I killed one big story that's kind of a story, but not really. So I'm going to go ahead. It'll be on Monday's edition of macOS Ken, but I want to go ahead and talk about it today, not because of the implications of not because of the news of the story itself, but because of the implications of the story. So the European Union, led by Margrethe Vestager, who is the head of competition for the European Commission, I think, is coming up with rules for how device manufacturers and service providers are going to be able to operate in the digital future into which we will all sail. One of the things that she's talking about, and this is one of the biggest things that's turned up in all the Apple press, although the article I read was from the Financial Times, because one of the things that all the articles are talking about is the fact that the European Union is looking at the possibility of not allowing hardware manufacturers to install their own apps on the hardware they sell. So there's a Spotify out there. Apple is selling you an iPhone. That iPhone comes pre-installed with Apple Music. The proposal, or one of the proposals anyway, is no, it wouldn't. It would no longer come pre-installed with Apple Music. I assume that would be true for TV as well. Would that be true for podcasts? I don't know. There are all kinds of services that Apple either offers or sells that come bundled on your iPhone. Now, the cool thing is a few years ago, they made it so you could take those off your iPhone. Used to be you couldn't get rid of the Stocks app. Now you can get rid of the Stocks app. I don't know if you can get rid of the Music app, honestly. And I can't remember now that I've said this. Does podcast come pre-installed, or do you have to install it as a separate thing? Anyway, the idea is, I assume, for app fairness, for business fairness, so that when I get an iPhone, I don't automatically think, well, I have to have Apple Music. I instead go, hey, I want music on this. I wonder what's available. And then I would go to whatever app store, because who knows if they're going to be allowed to run their own app store. And I would see Deezer staring me in the face. I would see Amazon Prime Music, maybe. I would see Spotify, certainly. And I would see Apple Music. I would see all kinds of things, and I would have a choice. I already have a choice, but apparently I would be forced to make a different choice, or forced to really decide. This is where I get a little confused, because if you're watching this live, or watching it later, you're obviously somebody who's more interested in tech than, say, the average consumer. I have made a choice to use Apple Music. I didn't make the choice to use Apple Music because it came pre-installed on the iPhone. I made the choice to use Apple Music, not because it came pre-installed on the iPhone, but the seamless integration with all the music that I already had and all the music I'd already bought through iTunes. So yes, I made a choice. They made that choice really easy for me, but it didn't have to do with the fact that it was pre-installed. You could, I suppose, argue that it does have to do with the fact that Apple has an advantage. I'm not going to say an unfair advantage, but Apple has an advantage in the fact that they made the software and they made the hardware too. Okay. None of that's really the thing that interests me, because either that's going to happen or it's not. What I started wondering about is, can we actually say that Apple is a services company? Now, I know Wall Street's very excited about services growing. I know they hit, what was it? They were going to double services revenue from 2015 or 2016, excuse me, by the end of 2020. And they went ahead and did that by the middle of 2020. They're making money on services. I did a story on macOS Ken today about how App Store revenue, according to Sensor Tower, Apple basically doubled, or close to doubled, Google's, the Google Play Store's revenue. Apple made something like $19.4 billion off of 8.2 billion installs, or million installs. I can't remember. I don't have it in front of me. See, because I was going to be all like, no, I got this. Point is, Apple doubled Google's revenue in the Play Store versus the App Store. So, I mean, they're making money on services, no question. They're not selling a lot of services outside of us, outside of the people who are already in the Apple ecosystem, right? Got in touch with a friend of mine who works for Apple. Oh yeah, I know people who work for Apple. I know 3 people who work for Apple, maybe 4. I don't know. Anyway, I got in touch with a friend of mine who works for Apple, because I couldn't remember what was available to other hardware manufacturers and what wasn't. I know for certain that services that are available for others include Apple Music, the Apple TV app, which is separate from Apple TV Plus, although that is also a thing, and iCloud. Those are all available to other people, and that's great. And I make the Apple TV app a separate thing from Apple TV Plus, because if you have the Apple TV app, you can then start buying whatever bundles they have, or subscribing through whatever they have. Like, I'm currently taking advantage of the CBS All Access Showtime bundle that they have, where if you buy CBS All Access by itself, it's $9.99. But if you buy it through the Apple TV app, you can actually get CBS All Access and Showtime for the same $9.99. So it's basically like getting Showtime for free. And of course, Apple is going to take a cut of that. That is a separate thing from Apple TV Plus, which of course you sign up for $5 a month and you get that. And yes, you can get that through your Vizio TV. You can get that through your Roku streaming device, your Amazon Fire. Talk is that you're going to be able to get it through the different consoles, both Sony PlayStation 5, I guess, or PS5, and the Series X and Series S Xboxes. Can somebody talk to Microsoft about their So those are services that they sell outside of the Apple ecosystem. Services they do not sell outside of the Apple ecosystem include Apple News Plus, Apple Arcade, Apple Fitness Plus, which of course they're not selling yet, but they will be at some point. I don't remember if there are other services out there that Apple is selling just to people in the Apple ecosystem and not to everybody else. But can you really call Apple a services company, or are they just making money off of services? Are they shooting fish in a barrel? We, by the way, are the fish. And this is the barrel. And this thing I'm talking to you on and all that stuff too. I don't know. Fitness Plus is only going to work with an Apple Watch and iOS 14, I believe. And then, of course, you'll be able to, spray that all over Apple TV. So you'll have an app there, and it'll show you the things on a bigger screen, and your workout metrics will show up there and all that. I would understand why they wouldn't necessarily offer that on anything else. That's so tightly integrated to 1, 2, 3 different pieces of hardware, I suppose. Apple TV Plus, I have absolutely no idea why that's not available elsewhere. I don't know. I keep thinking that Apple is a services company. A services company would sell services, not, upsell once you're in the hardware space. Not knocking them for it. It's fine. I do wonder, though, if the EU does come out and say, you can't install your services on the phone anymore. And first of all, Apple's got more money than Croesus, so they'll be able to do whatever marketing campaign they need to do to make sure that people understand that they can still get all of these things, even if those things aren't automatically there. I certainly understand why Apple would not want to force people to make a choice. People have choices right now. You can go any number of places to get news. You can also get Apple News Plus. You can go any number of places to subscribe to music with apps in the App Store, or you can subscribe to Apple Music. Kind of interesting when what was the argument with Fortnite and V-Bucks? When the Fortnite attorney argued that the fact that a lot of people, 50% of the people who are playing Fortnite on iOS, obviously want another way to buy apps because 50% of the people actually bought V-Bucks through Fortnite's direct payment thing. Apple's attorney shot back, well, actually, all that proves is that people want to pay $7 for $10 worth of stuff. Doesn't prove that they want another way. It just proves they're willing to pay less. If you go into the App Store and try to sign up for Spotify, it's $12.99. I believe the same is true for Deezer. I believe the same is true for Tidal. But if you try to sign up for Apple Music, it's only $9.99 because those other guys are trying to make up for the 30% cut that Apple would take if they priced it at $9.99. So has Apple proven that they've got a better product with Apple Music? Or have they only proven that, people want to pay $10 for something instead of 13? If Apple is forced to remove the apps from the stuff that they pre-sell, first of all, that's for iPad, that's for iPhone. Is that for Mac? And where does that stop? There's a pretty good chance that a lot of the stuff that is in those apps are actually integral to iOS. And on the Mac side, some of them might be integral to the Mac side. Apple might argue you can't just pull that out, and that may actually technically be true. There's certainly no reason you can't paper over it. I mean, maybe every phone comes with Apple Music installed, but you can't see it unless you go to the App Store and say, I want to download this. And it'll be the fastest download ever because it turns out it was actually already on your phone. You just couldn't see it because it was papered over, because that's guessing. I would imagine that Apple will argue you can't take this functionality out without messing up something in the operating system. That's one of the things that's great about the iOS ecosystem. It's also tightly woven and integrated. It just works when it does. I don't see any reason they couldn't just paper over it so we couldn't see it. It would still be there. That'll be an interesting thing. That might end up being an argument if this whole thing actually goes through. I assume it would actually start with lawsuits. Then you'll have questions about whether Apple will continue selling in the European Union. And of course, Apple will, because while it's not the biggest market by any stretch of the imagination, it's a large market. No way Apple's going to want to walk away from Germany, going to want to walk away from France, going to want to walk away from England and other countries. Actually, England's not in the EU, so scratch that one. I apologize. That's too soon. Anyway, that's some of my thinking about what's going on right there. I want to say that'll be interesting to follow. I think it will be. We're going to have to follow it whether we find it interesting or not, though, because that's going to be a big thing that we're going to be talking about. Oh, golly, I would guess for at least the next 6 months off and on, and then maybe a lot more after that, depending on how it goes. Before we get to the next thing, I want to remind you really quickly about other shows and stuff that I have going. If you have just found this on YouTube and don't know about macOS Ken, macOS Ken is a show that I started almost 15 years ago now. It is daily Apple news or news related to Apple news. That's it. Maybe other tech news if I find it amusing, but mostly it's directly related to Apple stuff. Should be there about 6:30 in the morning on the East Coast. A lot of times it is not, because I am a terrible night owl, but I'm a great procrastinator. So it's there a lot, though. It's there every day, I hope, unless I get sick or something like that. I also host a show for the guys at Secure Mac called The Checklist. It's actually called The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. And I think that's all I'm talking about right now. Yeah, those two shows. I feel like I'm missing one. Well, of course I am, in a few minutes. That's a conversational tech show where I get together with somebody I know, maybe from the tech press, maybe other podcasters, maybe just friends of mine who have some foot somewhere in technology. And yeah, we kick around some conversations. One day they actually bring me a story that they find interesting. One day we play a game. Other days we talk about other things. So it is The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. It is in a few minutes, and it is macOS Ken. You can find all of those every place that you find podcasts. And then macOS Ken and In a Few Minutes are actually on this YouTube channel as well. Not video on those, but you're going to be here watching this video anyway. Heck, why not stick around and listen to more stuff? So yeah. And I was going to say I take Saturday and Sunday off, but I don't. There are just no shows on Saturday and Sunday right now. But there's time. I tend to like to fill that. So this other thing is not. I got into a political argument with somebody earlier this week on a point on which we agree, and yet it got really vitriolic. Because if you say COVID-19, if you say mask, if you say contact tracing, there is a chance that somebody is going to be angry. Whatever. The thing that's starting to annoy me now is we're how long into this? 7 months, I think. It was back in April that Apple and Google said, we're going to work on this contact tracing thing, and we're going to have a framework out by next month, and everybody's going to be allowed to use it. Everybody's going to be able to use it. They went over all the ways that people were not going to be tracked. They went over all the ways that they were going to try to make it safe. Honestly, I think one of the biggest things that you have to acknowledge in deciding whether their heart was in the right place was that Apple and Google were working together on that. Apple and Google, while they do have business relationships, I wouldn't call them besties at this point. I mean, it wouldn't be like Apple working with Facebook, but they're not constantly trying to find ways to work together. It's not like, Apple and Disney. Apple and Disney try to find ways to work together from time to time, although I think that's happening less with the new guy as CEO, and also with the fact that they have the competing streaming services at this point. Apple and Google are not constantly getting in bed together. Apple and Google are not constantly trying to find ways to work together. And yet when this thing happened, Apple and Google said, we're going to work together. And politicians on both sides said, well, I just don't know how people are going to trust that. Without actually talking to Apple or Google, without actually talking to the two largest tech companies on the planet, or two of the largest tech companies on the planet. I think they're probably the top two. Maybe it's Apple, Microsoft, and Google. I'm not sure. But without talking to them about what their plan was, they basically just started immediately casting aspersions. And it was only I'm going to say ignorance, and I don't mean it in a mean way. I mean, they obviously didn't know anything about it because it had just been announced, and reporters rushed to them and said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Personally, what I would rather have seen both sides do is say, "It's an interesting idea that we're going to look into a bit more." Instead, you had both Democrats and Republicans saying, "Well, there's such a distrust in tech. I don't know how people are ever going to trust this." And who knows how far that set back our contact tracing possibilities. Because then you had a number of people, and look, I'm all for trying different things, but you had a number of people deciding to reinvent the wheel. And that's great because you know what? Before somebody reinvented the wheel, we probably had crappy wheels that nobody liked, right? That didn't work well, that were bumpy, and somebody came and refined and, did whatever they did. That's fine. Fact of the matter is, Apple and Google worked on something. They laid out how the whole thing was going to work, and they said, here's this thing that you are now welcome to try. And I believe the article that I read the other day said 11 states in the US have tried this. There was a Vox article that I saw earlier today that said the US is one step closer to nationwide contact tracing. And what that's based on is the fact that Delaware, Pennsylvania, who are the others? New York, New Jersey, maybe Rhode Island, I'm not sure, are using the Apple Google API, and they're making them interoperable as well. Connecticut's going to be coming onto that pretty soon. According to that article I read before, though, that's 11 states out of 50. 48 of those are connected. I want to say it was Utah's app, which was made by an independent company that actually literally used to make an app and may still make an app whose function is to get people physically together. What they're famous for is making an app that physically gets people together. That's who I believe it was Utah turned to say, okay, now let's do this contact tracing thing. And it works in Utah. And it only works in Utah if the people sign up. And it also demands much more information than the Apple or Google API demand. It feels like for the politicians to immediately say, I don't know how people are going to trust it, is just to feed every sort of dark suspicion that people have. I have heard people say they're never going to use a contact tracing app because that's how they track you. Well, no, because the Apple Google API is set up to literally not track you. It's anonymized. It just lets you know if you happen to have been in the same room with somebody else who had this thing or nearby somebody else who had this thing, but you don't know who that person is. They don't know who you are. You don't even know where you came into contact. It's hidden in that respect. Anybody who doesn't want to use a contact tracing app because they're afraid they're going to be tracked needs to take their smartphone and pitch it in the river. Because if they, and I put they in quotes in case you were looking away, if they want to track you, they can because you have a smartphone. And using your smartphone to do something that's hopefully going to save your life and somebody else's, that's just, I don't know. I'd like for everybody to go ahead and get on the stick. And the other thing is, and it's not just because I trust Apple, and it's not just because I trust Google, because I don't trust Google, honestly. It's not just because I trust those two companies. Even if you wanted to take a wait and see approach, England tried to make their own app, and it got, I believe the term is bollocksed. Australia tried to make their own app, and it got messed up. There have been states, I believe, that have tried to make their own app and found out that they didn't know what they were doing. And they found out that the thing that actually was going to work for them was, wait for it, the Apple Google API. From both sides, we have lacked cohesive messaging. I would like it if we could go ahead and get on board with this one. It's actually a group in Ireland. I can't remember the name of the company, but it's a group in Ireland that's making that app for all of those states that I talked about in the Northeast. They're ready to roll. This is ready. The thing that's frustrating is this is something that we could do something about. And look, it's not going to be the end all be all. Everybody agrees that actual human contact tracing is the real way to go, but we don't have that either. So could I at least have something that's trying to do something and hopefully succeeding? Can I go ahead and can I get that while we work on the other thing? Because what really frustrates me is this is something that we could do. This is something that we could take care of if we would agree that we can, and then if we would be allowed to. So that's me. How are you? What are you up to? You don't write, you don't call. Of course, I don't give you a chance to call, but you don't write. My email is info@macoscan.com. If you're enjoying these, there are a couple of things I would ask you to do. If you could share them, that would be awesome. If you could hit the subscribe button, that would also be awesome. Hey, look at me, I'm a YouTuber. Mash that subscribe button. Really, if you just tell people about it, and if you keep turning back up, because it is wonderful to see people here and to see the chat going, which, by the way, stick around because I will read all that chat in a moment. Yeah, all this stuff starts again Monday. macOS Canton goes again Monday. In a few minutes goes again Monday. We will likely be right here again Monday. I think I'm pretty much like, I think this is pretty much a thing I do now. So, yay! Stuff continues. We're back into it soon. Have a great weekend. I'm going to pretend to be TV now. And we're clear. Okay. Woo! Good show, everybody. There's nobody here but me. Well, there are people out there. Right. So this is the part of the show where I actually read what people were saying to me while we were talking, because I don't do that during the show. You did do a video version of my podcast. I remember, Frank, I actually wrote stuff for your video version of the podcast. You were, man, you've actually been pretty integral in stuff that I've done. I think the first video I ever produced was for you. I know, right? We should have hitched our wagons together. Laura says, yeah, it's a really good question, Laura. Laura says, I would think, going back to the thing that we were talking about the App Store and the whether you're going to be able to install stuff. See, that's a really great question. The App Store is actually an app, isn't it? The App Store is an application that sells you other stuff. If Apple can't pre-install stuff on their phone, can they install the App Store? Laura says she would imagine they can, because otherwise, how would you know about it? Right? Unless it's a thing where you have to plug it into your computer or something, and then it takes you to a page where you choose. I admire a lot of what the EU is trying to do as far as fairness and as far as privacy protection and things like that. But I don't know. They're going to end up with those chunky wheels again, it seems to me. A lot of fish in the barrel. Evolution of hardware is slowing down. I don't know, Frank. Frank says the evolution of Apple's hardware is slowing down. I'm not sure that's true. I mean, the iPhone was so incredibly revolutionary. It's hard to do that again. I know that August Trometer thought that when the Apple Watch came out, that it was useless. He said Tim Cook came out on stage and put his arms up in victory, and he wasn't sure that there was any reason for a victory. But you know what? Apple's got August has a Series 5 Apple Watch. And I don't believe that's his first one, and I don't believe it's his second one. So it did something. David says macOS Can rocks. Thanks, David. What do you mean sometimes I need a break? Like take time off? I like that idea, David. If that's what you mean. Have you ever thought about going back to Mac Break Weekly? I wait for their call. I think the last time they got in touch with me, I actually dropped the ball. I missed their email. I don't know. I mean, I like Leo, and I like being on that show. It's a lot of fun, honestly. I always end up with trolls after I go on Mac Break Weekly. I think half the fun for some of his, and a small fraction, I think half the fun for some of his audience is watching Leo, and then the other half is bashing people who are not Leo or Andy or Renee, obviously, or maybe they just hate me. I don't know. There were like 3 people last time I was on there who wrote to me and said I should quit. So I quit Mac Break Weekly. Good times. Nabil is in the house. Oh, okay. And Nabil wants me to go back to doing video in a few minutes. Somebody actually wrote to me recently and said that I should do that as a Zoom thing. Problem is Zoom doesn't give you enough control, and that's the real problem. I'm a control freak. What I like about this is you start it, it goes, you finish it. There's no editing. There's nothing you can do. I was not hugely happy with yesterday's show, and I'm kind of bummed by the fact that because I've said this show is this show, that it's just going to be that way forever, but it's going to be that way forever. If I actually get into a place where I'm editing video, it's just forever. Plus, I'm trying to start this because honestly, in a few minutes, if you want to peek behind the curtain really quickly, in a few minutes, it takes me probably about 2.5 hours to produce all 5 shows, would be my guess for the week, maybe 3. When I was doing video for that, that number shot up to about 7 or 8 hours a week because there's still the recording and the prep and all that stuff. So that's about 2 hours right there. And then it was an hour each to edit and post when I was doing the video. So you're looking at about 7 hours a week, which is fine, except I still do macOS Ken every day. I still do the checklist every day, and now I'm doing this too. Because I'm just, jamming more content out there, out there, something. I do appreciate your saying that, though, Nabil. It was nice. If I eventually get to a place where I have, where I can afford to pay people, I'd consider doing it again. Frank says he hasn't been able to get the, you haven't been able to get the contact tracing app in New Jersey. That's kind of weird. We have an app in Virginia, but after looking at the logs, I think my wife and I are the only ones with it. Oh man. Yeah, you see, that's the next part with the messaging. That was the thing that was impressive about Belgium, man. Belgium. The leader of Belgium said the other day when they launched their Apple Google API contact tracing app, said now what we need is for everybody who can use it to use it, because the only way it works is if everybody who can use it uses it. There was a story recently that I can't remember if it was Health and HHS, somebody, one of the federal agencies spent millions of dollars basically just trying to spin positive some of what's been happening in the COVID reaction here in the States. Could have spent that money on an app. Could have spent that money on a service that would actually do something instead of just trying to make people feel better. Oh, Laura deleted a message. I will wonder forever what she said. I see what you're saying, Laura. Laura says that her point was not about getting the App Store on the phone. Her point was that with Apple's rules, that's literally the only way you can install anything. Bring it up with Margarita Vestea. See, that's the thing. A lot of people say, well, you should be able to do something different. This goes back to 2016 when I believe it was Hillary Clinton said that she believed in the idea of a Manhattan Project that would make it possible for law enforcement to get into encrypted devices without weakening encryption. You can't just decide something. You can't just decide, well, there ought to be a way to do that, and then legislate that people have to do it that way, because sometimes you're asking for the impossible. Not that it would be impossible to have another way to install stuff on an iPhone, but yeah, I think when the EU and certainly members of the US government as well say, well, you just can't do it that way anymore, I would love for them to also have to come with a plan of how you do it. I don't think you can just take something that's working, say it's broken, and then tell somebody to fix it, and not listen to them when they say, well, actually, you're going to break it. Is he really? I did not know that Alex was doing a daily thing. Okay. Now Frank's deleted a message. You people with your deleted messages. This is why I don't read over here. One more. Reposted the question. Okay. So Laura is saying that she's actually put up what she erased, but can we ever know for sure? Forgive me. I did the thing again where I brought a coffee and then I don't drink the coffee while I'm on. All right, guys and gals. Thank you all very much for coming. This was I'm apparently done talking. This was invigorating. I really enjoyed these topics, and thank you very much for hearing me out on them. I seriously would love your feedback as well. So, leave comments on the videos or info@macosken.com. You people, each and every one of you rock. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Yeah. Take care.